In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Be seated. We are called to learn a new language. Last week, our Ephesians reading said to us, "Speak the truth in love." And Ephesians today takes it a step further. So then, putting away falsehood, let all of us speak the truth to our neighbors, for we are members of one another. We are being called to learn a new language. Admittedly, the current linguistic landscape, I would say, is a bit complex, even fraught. It's like methods and modes of speech change and exchange and interchange like a kaleidoscope. And there is much suspicion and deep division. What is true? There's suspicion of whether truth is even possible. So these waves of conflicting speech, of this is true or this is true, I think even tear at the fabric of our society. And I give one example is current views of the coronavirus, the vaccine. Some people think this is true. Some people think this is true. Sometimes we may just want to say nothing. And yet, it is in just such a place and a time that we are called to learn a new language. So I imagine there are languages among us, people who have learned languages. Let's start with raise your hand if you, in any time in your life, learned one other language than English. Excellent. Okay. Keep your hand up if you've learned 2 other languages than English. Nice. 3. Yay. We have a winner over here. 3 again. Okay. 4. It's not about competition in church anyway, but it is interesting. God bless you, 4 and above. Anybody learning one currently? Raise your hand. Anybody learning a second language at the moment? Anybody in school? All right. I only have New Testament Greek a bit, which helps me study these texts, and you probably get tired of that, maybe. And then my living one, long time ago, was Italian. I studied Italian at University of Kansas and then got to have some time in Italy. And my main memories are a time in Florence when I stayed in a convent that opened rooms for young women. And my main mentors in Italian were these young women who were restoring frescoes. And they helped me learn to speak. I always remember that when I woke up, it was very hard to get the cobwebs off and to move from English to Italian. But they would gather me and they'd talk about the espresso maker, very old school, right? It was like on a little burner. They'd talk about coffee in Italian, and that helped wake me up. And then they'd do things like, there was this one who took me to the market, and it was so helpful. She just modeled it and mentored me, and I started speaking Italian. Learning a new language is difficult, and it takes commitment. But Ephesians tells us that as followers of the risen Jesus, we must learn this speaking the truth in love language. And Ephesians shows us what a rich language it is. It has a crucial starting point, which is humility. The apostle says, before a word is uttered, we must face the truth about ourselves. We have to look at our strengths. We don't have to hide from those. We also have to look at our weaknesses, even our capacity for harm. We have to look at ourselves honestly, truthfully, talk to ourselves in love and truth. And then that gives us the foundation for compelling words with others. Interestingly, the verb for speaking the truth, it's one verb. It's not 3 words, speaking the truth. It's speaking the truth. And it signifies giving expression that is true, that is in line with the way God sees things. So it should be an expression that is steeped in prayer, where the Creator, God, or the Risen One, Jesus, or the Spirit is showing us what to say. That is the sole purpose of speaking the truth, is for it to be a foundation for love. Saying something upon which love can grow, love can be built. And how different is that than the landscape I described, where you and I may be spewing left and right every critical idea or snarky opinion that comes into our brains. That can grow division, insecurity, anxiety. Our children, we just saw it in the Olympics. Our young people are just riveted with anxiety, even hatred upon that kind of speech. But no, this language of speaking the truth in love is expressing something upon which love can grow, love can be built. With whom do we speak this language? We absolutely are called to speak the truth in love with our loved ones. Sometimes that's not always easy. Right there in our family circles, we practice it. Maybe not saying everything that comes into our brain, but saying the thing that's true, that's steeped in prayer, upon which love can grow. We must do it here, in your faith community, one to another. That is the way you speak to each other. And lastly, Ephesians today, that extra added piece makes it clear that this is the way we must speak with our neighbors. The word neighbor kind of changed over the biblical sacred texts from being more who were people just like you, but by the time of Jesus, it became clear that neighbor is very broad. When Jesus said to love your neighbor, a lawyer who was present asked him to clarify what he meant by neighbor. The lawyer wanted a legal definition he could refer to in case the question of loving one ever happened to come up. He presumably wanted something on the order of, a neighbor, hereinafter referred to as the party of the first part, is to be construed as meaning a person of Jewish descent, whose legal residence is within a radius of no more than 3 statute miles from one's own legal residence, unless, of course, there is another person of Jewish descent living closer, in which case the party of the second part, etc., etc. Instead, Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan. The point seems to be that your neighbor is to be construed as meaning anybody who needs you. St. Augustine, I think, puts a bit of a fine point on this, gives me something helpful. Let no one mistake this. The apostle is not giving us room to tell a lie to those who are not yet members of the Christian church. The point of the saying is that each of us should consider everyone as we wish him or her to become, even if they have not yet. We ought to deal with every person in such a way that he or she will cease to be an outsider. Regard them as your neighbor already. Regard them as your neighbor already. Lastly, as we think of these neighbors, and again, every time I drive into the diocesan office parking lot and see your sign, love your neighbor, I'm so proud of you that you are speaking outward, that you're taking this message. This is who we are. Love your neighbor. This is what we do. And you're facing it out. It's crucial. The last thing I love about this Greek word for speaking the truth is that speaking there is not only words. The ancient understanding is that speech, this kind of articulation, is word and or action, integrated. When I was in Italy, when they were taking me around the market, these young women said, and it's been 30 years now, but parliamo con I gesti, which is, what John knows it, we speak with gestures. So she taught me, certain point in the market, you don't say anything. You walk away. Or somebody's really rude to you, various gestures, right? Speaking with your whole body. Well, that's there in this ancient understanding in Ephesians. We must integrate what we say with what we do, because that is how truth will regain credibility. We must speak and act. Parliamo con I gesti. We speak with gesture. It was left out on your readings because the very first lines, the very first two words of that verse of Ephesians that I'm looking at actually begins with so then, comma. And of course, they took that off because you don't need that this morning. And yet, it's really, really important because the so then points back to what's gone on in Ephesians before. And the main point is that we are called to grow into the stature of Christ. We are Him in this world. And that is why we speak the truth in love. The new language is Jesus' own language. We think more and more, we hope His thoughts, and we must act more and more His actions. We come here on a Sunday morning, and the liturgy of the Word, Jesus, the risen one, speaks truth in love to you and to me and to us, and we receive it. He speaks truth in a way that love grows in us. And then we move to the table, and He speaks the truth in love to us con I gesti, by gesture. His ultimate gesture was wordless on the cross, an act of love. And every Sunday, He invites us into death and resurrection in bread and wine, in gesture, con I gesti. So may we absorb Him in word, in sacrament, and move out to speak and act His language of love in our fractured world.